Hi, what's up? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Evy Poumpouras here with us. It's time to talk about becoming bulletproof. What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing well, hanging in there. How about you?
Yeah, it's a crazy time, but plenty of time to read, plenty of time to reconnect with people. I know you're out there helping the first responders with Dunkin' Donuts. So what's been like, interacting with people the last 2 months?
I think I've been out there in the mornings. I've been going out with the Police Benevolent Association and with Dunkin' and Health Aid, and we've been going to all the different precincts here in New York City. I think it's, trying to figure out like how I can contribute, even if it's with, just food and beverage, but you're just letting people know like, hey, we see you. Thank you for what you're doing. And I actually think people are adopting pretty well to what's happening. I think initially it was a bit of a difficult thing for people to kind of adjust to, but I'm pretty impressed with New York City and the way everyone's kind of been like, all right, what do we need to do?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome how resilient we can be. We have all these different problems as a culture and society, but a lot of people have stepped up. I mean, you were somebody who's had a career of service as well, so I'm sure you obviously know what's going on with these people. So when you wrote your book, what were some things that were most interesting for you, just personally to reflect on before, everybody else learned your story?
I mean, I wrote Becoming Bulletproof to help people. When the idea of writing a book came to me and the thought of it, I was like, I want to write something that shares everything that I learned. I was really fortunate. I went through all these different academies and I was around very brilliant, resilient people. And it kind of stayed into that idea of service. How can I serve people? And how can I take everything that I absorbed over all the years, successes and failures, knowledge, experiences, and put it in a book that people can use in their everyday life? Because I found myself over the years being asked questions by people. Hey, I have this problem. How do I maneuver this? Or, hey, this happened to me. And so Becoming Bulletproof, it's really 3 books in 1 book. And it's it's your manual, your life manual. It's protection, how to protect yourself, not just physically, because we get caught up on that, oh, how to protect my body. Well, what about your mind and your mental resilience and how you deal with adversity, or how that sometimes demolishes you? Or can you build up your resilience so that you can deal with problems? Something like this. And then the second part of the book is reading people, which comes from my polygraph, my interrogation years, the body language, the reading people, the verbal language, and how can you use that in your day-to-day life? I use it now, post law enforcement career, more now that I work in TV and in journalism. I use it more now than I ever did before in connecting with people. And then the third part of the book is influence strategies. How do we influence people to give us what we want? How do you deal with confrontation? So how do you take somebody who's very rigid, who's confrontational, and how do you maneuver that person or deal with that person to get them to a place where they want to communicate and talk with you? And it's all these little strategies. And I wanted to make sure too that when I wrote the book, that it's not, I don't want to talk about in theory. Oh, in theory, this is great. I'm like, no, you're going to read this book and you can use the stuff in it the very next day, that next moment, if you want to do it. And I wanted to make it as simple as possible so that people can digest it and implement it into their lives. It's 20 years in the making, this book. So I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah, you certainly should be. And there's a lot of really applicable things, like particularly point number 2, reading people. I think that's something that we as a society struggle with across the board. And it's one thing to read somebody with a polygraph test, but I feel like our default setting is like, oh, this person's so nice, like they mean so well. When in truth, like it's very easy for people to con and manipulate. So what's it like for you to kind of use those skills in real life, and how can people learn more to try and figure out who people really are in their everyday life?
Wait, but you know what? You know what's interesting? Good people can mislead us.
Mm-hmm.
Good people, we all lie, by the way. We all
Yep,
lie. Some
absolutely.
research says that you'll lie within, one conversation, you might tell 10 lies. Like even, you and I introduce ourselves. Hey, how are you? I'm great. How are you? I'm great. Meanwhile, who knows what's going on in our
Yeah,
personal
exactly.
life, right? It's a lie. It's an honest lie. But if you want to have a good read on people, you want to look at them, connect with them, try to understand them, because sometimes what we say is not in harmony with what we mean. So good people can mislead us just as much as bad people can. So with bad people, you want to be able to read body language, verbal language. You want to look for deceit, those obvious things to protect yourself. But even with good people who are maybe holding back information, who are afraid, or maybe they have a different motive or agenda, when you can understand another person better, then you can connect better, rather than kind of like have this, this ego versus ego thing. You're thinking, what's my goal? What's my point? So I really I wrote the book in a way to adjust our framework, our mindset of like, what are we after? We're after the truth. We're after a deal. We're after an interview. We're after a negotiation. We're after something. And so how do we game it so that we can get to that end result instead of getting lost in the, oh, they're so nice. He seems so honest. That's okay. But that's not what you want to, that's not what we're looking at here. We want to get a true assessment of another human being. But you got to pay attention. You got to know what to look for.
Yeah, awareness is really key in this situation. And, you brought up something else before where it comes to your mental health, your self-care. For somebody like you spent so much of your career thinking about other people, protecting other people. What was it like to kind of, peel back the layers just on your own personal journey through all of this? Because so much of your attention was on protecting other people.
But you know what's interesting though? The one thing that we learned in training is like you have to protect yourself first and take care of yourself first. Because if I'm not strong, if I'm not healthy, if I'm not well, I'm good to no one else. So ironically, you're taught to protect other people, but with the understanding that if you're not strong and you're not protecting you, you're going to be a complete mess. You're going to be when it comes to anybody else. And so we've always had that mindset of like, take care of yourself, eat healthy. You got one body, make sure you're doing right by it. Take care of your mental, your mental mindset. Even I remember when I first started, I went into the New York City Police Academy. That was my first real exposure to law enforcement. Even then they were like, hey, look at who you hang out with. That was the first time somebody really said, aside from my parents, they were like, a lot of the people you're friends with now, you're not going to be friends with anymore because their value systems may not align with the value systems that you have to have now. And so there's a constant assessment of your environment because I don't care how much we think we're a strong, resilient person. Oh, I know me. You're going to be influenced by other people in your life. And if they're not the influences you need in life, they're going to change your set of beliefs, your system, your values. It's also going to affect how you exist. So for example, if you're around other very brave people, you're going to be a more brave person. If you're around other very fearful, panicky people, guess what? You're going to be a very fearful, panicky person.
That's a great point right there. And you were around people that were some of the most powerful and influential, I could argue, of the last 20 years and beyond. What would surprise people the most about your time as a Secret Service agent that we don't talk about enough necessarily?
I think the number one thing is most people think all you do is protect the president. I think that is the most misleading thing. You finish training and then the doors open to the White House and it's like, oh, welcome. So there's two myths with that. One is that to get to the president's detail, a current president, one, not everybody gets that. There's an internal selection process that you have to go through, and you don't get to that point until many years later in your career, if you even get to that point. The other thing is the Secret Service is a dual mission agency, so they work investigation, they work crime. You're doing search warrants and arrest warrants. I think that surprises people that, hey, you do all these other things. And I happen to be an interviewer, an interrogator, and I actually happen to help other police departments solve their own crimes and cases, or try to get confessions from people where they were maybe stuck in a crime, or clear people that maybe they were looking at the wrong person.
It's clear you were massaging all these different skills during your service career. So it's not a huge surprise that you're doing all this afterwards. But, you clearly could have done this for the rest of your life. You could have continued on the same path. Why did you decide, you know what, I want to do some other things and pursue some other avenues here?
Yeah, I think it's so true because, I was doing a job that I love, but an opportunity came to go into news to do cover crime and national security, and the seed was first planted by an NBC producer. And I thought to myself, okay, if I stay here, I know how it's going to turn out. But this could lead me to something else. And one of the things I learned over my years is to take risks, calculated risks to some degree, but to see what would happen. I didn't want to live with regret. And that's always something that really stayed with me. I never wanted to look back and be like, if I had tried this, how would that have turned out? And part of having courage is also living with courage. It's not just jumping in front of a bullet to save somebody else's life. Courage is making decisions that, although they may seem scary or terrifying or uncertain, being able to make those choices because you don't know what they could yield. And sometimes they can yield something greater than what you have. And so I really wanted to live by what I preach, so to speak, not to just talk it, but to walk it.
Yeah, you're certainly doing that. What would you say are some of your proudest moments from your career? Because obviously getting to the top of the charts there and serving presidents is great, but you did all this other casework. So what are the things that come to mind still for you?
I think probably my proudest moments, or where I felt the most content was when I would help solve a crime, when you would bring justice. And there were moments where there was a crime and the person would possibly get away with it. And I was asked to, hey, could you interview this person? Could you get a confession? And I would walk in and talk to that person. When I say interrogation, everybody, assumes it's like this in your face kind of harassing another human being, which looks great on television drama, but in real life, it does not work. It would be more like therapy sessions when you'd sit and you would talk to someone and you get them to confess to, especially if it was a crime against children. Those were really the most difficult, because you're like, I need to figure out if this person hurt this child because there's likely other victims. I think that's where I felt the most contentment, the most satisfaction, where you're doing something to help make society better. At least you're trying to.
Yeah. What was the toughest part of the journey for you overall?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think like there's no one big tough thing. I think we have tough moments. Tough moments in where you're required to do a job that can maybe physically taxing, being out in the elements, working out in the elements, in the freezing cold or rain, that can be taxing. But there are moments. I don't think there's anything huge. And I think like anything in life, there's tough moments. And can you just deal with those tough moments? And I think also the lifestyle, it can be great because you're part of this like tight-knit family, but then at the same time, other areas of your life kind of take a hit a little bit. Sometimes people ask like, oh, can you have it all? Like you hear that, can you have it all? Can you have the career and the family and the this? It's like, I've learned you can have it all, just not at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So you mentioned how you remember the first time you walked in the New York City Police Department. Do you remember the last time you walked out of the White House? And did you know that was going to be the last time you walked out of the White House?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the day I resigned, the day I was like, all right, I'm leaving. And it was like you're surrendering all your stuff. And I remember surrendering my gear and my weapons. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm really doing this. I'm really moving into television and journalism and covering news. And I was like, well, I'm going to commit to it. And I transitioned fully. I even went to journalism school. I was like, oh, I better learn what I'm doing. You have to know how to interview and speak to people and work in television. And it was a really different industry for me. But I was excited and terrified. And I think like those are all two great things. I think that's when you know you're doing well in life, when you're both excited and terrified at the same time. And that's okay. So the unknown can be a brilliant thing for you. Sometimes you want to know. It's like, just go with the journey.
I totally agree with that. How about the show on Bravo? What has been the most interesting part of that experience so far?
Bravo was fun. It was fun. I felt like one of my Secret Service instructors putting everybody else through stuff, because usually I was the trainee. So it was kind of like, what can we do this week? I think that was extraordinary. And there was a level of I don't want to say lightness, but it was different. It was fun. It was also, interestingly enough, you would see a transition happen, especially with some of the competitors that stayed on longest for the show. You see them come in one way and go through these different ordeals or adversities that we would put them through. And you could see this emotional, mental transformation happen to them, where they would come out a very different person, a more resilient person and a strong person. And I still to this day have a lot of the competitors reach out to me and connect with me and say thank you. And it was interesting how we made a positive shift in their life.
Well, I'm really excited to see your next chapter. Thanks so much, Evy, for jumping on, and best luck with everything going forward, all right?
Thank you so much.